When I think about gardening right now, I still feel like it's a year away. I feel like last season just got over, so it's kind of weird for me to change my mindset around gardening. Last year, we expanded our garden by quite a bit. We made it a lot wider. We bought 16 of these bagel garden raised beds, which were probably the best addition I've ever had to a garden in general. They were so much fun to grow in. And the way we laid it out, as you can see behind me, the way we laid it out is we laid them all side by side, and we were able to put arched trellises in between each one. And what this does is it gives us the maximum possible growing space that we can have. So a lot of our squashes, a lot of our melons were growing on these arched trellises here behind me. And for me, I start planting my garden in January. This is early enough to get a head start to make sure that we're ready for spring. It's early enough that we don't need to start planting seeds yet, but if I need to order some, I can order those seeds. Now, I'm not saying that the way that I do it is like the best way to do it, but it's the way that I do it. Now today I'm going to take you along with me while I take this blank slate of a garden that I have here behind me, and I put it all into paper. I get what I'm going to planned out. I'm going to get my seeds planned out when I need to get them planted. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to show you exactly how I do it. So let me go ahead and show you what I do first, because it's an important one. The very first thing I do is I talk to my wife about what she wants to grow, because even though I do most of the gardening, I'm lucky enough to have her doing most of the cooking. So I have to figure out what she wants to grow. Tomatoes are always a must. And honestly, those last couple of years, pimento de padron, carrots, onions. Okay, we already have onion seeds. That's spinach. Okay. Yeah. We don't have any spinach, so we need to get spinach. Spinach, lettuce, just, I like my salads. Okay, we'll do a salad garden out front. We already kind of have that planned, but not all the way. I think I want patty pan squash again. We already have seeds for that. Yeah. So we have to grow it. I'll get them grown. This is mostly for me to figure out what kind of seeds to order. I already knew that we were getting you some patty pan squash. Will we have some room for bell peppers? I know you don't like them, but I cook with them all the time and you just don't know. It's like the kids with the carrots and spaghetti sauce. I can make room for bell peppers, yes. Thank you. And I want herbs in the herb garden, but that's gonna be separate. We'll do those out front where the salad and everything is. Corn. Just sweet corn? I'm gonna get popcorn. Okay, I've never grown popcorn before, but I'll try to figure it out. Peas. Peas, already on the list. We're doing peas. Green beans. Already on the list, we're doing green beans. Okra. Already on the list, we're doing okra. Can we do beans, like legumes? And not lima beans, because I can't with those, but. You'll have to explain to me more what black beans, we use those so much during cooking. Oh, chickpeas, garbanzo beans. So like for hummus, isn't that what you make hummus out of? Yeah, and just in general, it's a good protein source. It's non-meat. Melons, we gotta have the melons, the kids. We've got 3 different kids with 3 different melons. Okay, should we figure out what the kids want? Yeah.
I just want honeydew. That's all I want.
You just want honeydew, nothing
honeydew.
Else. One that actually grows and doesn't die.
Yeah, because you messed up last year and got dead ones.
I didn't get dead ones. I killed alive ones.
They're pretty much dead ones. They didn't grow anything.
Okay.
You messed up.
I want to grow corn and the watermelon with the yellow inside, that type. I want that.
Okay. I think we have seeds for
that.
Yeah.
A wood splitter, I need to cut wood.
What?
A wood splitter.
A wood splitter. What do you want me to grow in the garden this year? Or what are you going to help me grow in the garden this year?
Plants.
What kind of plants?
Watermelons.
Okay, just normal watermelons?
Yes, cantaloupe.
All right. Any other special requests?
A squash.
What kind of squash?
Squash. Tomatoes.
Tomatoes? Okay, is that everything?
Yes.
All right, girl. What are we growing in the garden this year? What do you want to grow?
Onions.
You don't even like onions.
I still want to grow corn because corn is my favorite.
Do you want to grow tomatoes? No tomatoes? What about, do you want to grow potatoes? Do you want to grow watermelon? Do you want to grow anything? The family has spoken. The important one is this one here. We have to make sure that we grow everything that she wants, and then we will take into consideration what everybody else wants, except for Maximus. I tried to grow Maximus some cantaloupe honeydew last year. I tried to grow him some honeydew last year, and I killed the plant, and he's never gonna let me live it down. Now that we know what the boss wants, I need to figure out what I want. And for me, this takes a long time because I'm so indecisive about what I want. Now this part, honestly, is probably what takes me longer than anything else in the entire garden planning process. And that's because I'm indecisive. I want to grow every possible thing there is to grow. Like anything I see, especially like, throughout the gardening season, you get on YouTube and you see all these awesome things that people are growing, and so you start writing them down, or you just start kind of taking a mental note, and before you know it, you've got a list of hundreds of different things that you want to grow. And that's kind of the predicament I get myself in. Now, the way that I go about this after I talk to my wife is I start thinking about the things that I know that I love to grow. Those are going to be things like peppers. Peppers are what got me into gardening in the first place. They are the number one thing that I want to grow every single year. I've got my favorite peppers that I want to grow, a few different ones that I want to try, and I grow those every year. I dedicate a couple different beds to that, and I know I'm growing those. Besides that, things like Armenian cucumbers, pickling cucumbers, there's different squashes that we really like to grow, like the scallop squashes last year were a big hit. The mashed potato squash that we did last year, that was a hit because the kids honestly didn't even realize the difference between mashed potatoes and that squash, depending on how we cooked it. There's all these things that I know that I want to grow, and I'm going to put those on my list first. And I'll throw a screenshot from my phone up on the screen so you can kind of see how I have that organized. It's very much like straight out of my brain, so it might not make a whole lot of sense, but pretty much what I do is I put every single thing I want to grow on the list. I separate what my wife wants to grow, so I make sure that I hit those first to make sure that those are going to be on the list. And then I start going through and I start putting a star next to anything that I really know that I want to grow, things that for sure are going to be in the garden. So that way when I go through the list, I know for sure that here's all the things I would like to grow, here's all the things that I'm actually growing, here's what my wife wants to grow. If you're a gardener, you're probably like me and you get just all kinds of different magazines. So I'll spend a lot of time looking through the magazines. I'll spend a lot of time getting online, specifically like these websites. This year, I bought all of my seeds already. What I did is I looked through the magazines, and then what I also did is I got onto the websites for these various magazines or whatever other websites I can find. I used Baker Creek. This is probably where I got the majority of my seeds, between this and MI Gardener. MI Gardener, they have prices that you really can't beat anywhere else. I bought a few from Gurney's. I bought some from Urban Farmer, and anything else that I wanted I already had here at the house from seeds that I've either saved from stuff from last year or just seeds that I didn't use the whole packet from last year. But either way, now is the time that you want to start getting these seeds together. Make a list on your phone, make a list on paper, make a list somewhere of the things that you want. Start looking at these different websites. And when I'm looking at these websites, I'm not just looking at what looks cool, right? I'm going to look at these websites and I'm going to look at what zones do they grow well in. I'm going to look at how hard they are to grow. I'm going to look at how to grow these. I'm going to look at how big they get. I want to look at if they are frost hardy or not frost hardy. I want to look at all these different things because I've made the mistake a lot of different times of planting something in my garden that did not work well in my zone, not even close to my zone. There's ways you can get around that if you plan for it, but if you're just throwing seeds in the ground and not looking at where they grow, how they grow, these different things, you're going to end up having a really bad season. Now, once we have the list of plants that we know for sure, this is what we are starting our garden with, these are the seeds that I need to plant, these are and honestly, I don't even plant all of my seeds. I buy some from the nursery. So things like pickling cucumbers, things like spaghetti squash, different things like that that are very easy to come by just at the local nurseries. I'm not going to start those from seeds. So get your list together. It doesn't need to be on a computer program. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. Piece of paper, phone note, something like that. Get what you want to grow, get it in a list, and let's get started. Now, the program that I use is on growveg.com. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, shape, or form. I've just been using them for the last couple of years, and I really like it. It is, I think, $35 a year to use. They have a 7-day free trial, and I definitely might know some people that have just done the 7-day free trial, planned their garden, and then didn't continue on after the trial. So it's definitely worth looking at, but you don't have to use this. Everything that I'm about to do on here is what I used to do on paper. This just organizes it in a better way and saves me hours and hours and hours of work. So after you've created an account, this is what you're going to see, except you won't see stuff over here. And don't judge me for my garden names that you're about to see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open a plan just to get us started here. And I'm going to go with the definitely not my garden, because I made this specifically just to show you how to do some of these things here. Now, as we go through some of these things here, just keep in mind that I'm showing you how to use this program. So some of this might not pertain to some of you that might be doing it on a piece of paper, but what we're doing is still going to pertain to you in the long run. So just stick with me here. Now, let's say I wanted to do squash. It's right here. So let's say we wanted to do some winter squash. I click on it, I come over here, I click again, and it drops it. Now, the red circle you see around the squash means a couple different things. It tells you what family of plant it is. It also tells you how big of a space that plant needs. So it does the spacing for you. Now, if I wanted to do just one squash, that's what I would do. That's all I would do. I'd place it there wherever I want it. But if I wanted to do a whole row of squash, I can click on it. I can come right here to this little box and I can do a row of squash. If I wanted to do a block of squash, I take this and I stretch it out this way. As you move it, it will show you how many plants you can do for that specific area. For now, let's do this. Let's put this whole thing here. You can move them around once you put them down. Now, if we zoom in here, you can see that it just says winter squash. It doesn't tell us what type of squash that is. Now, what we can do is we can double click on this. We can come over here and change the variety. So let's say angel hair. Who doesn't like angel hair squash? So I'm gonna say done, and now that says angel hair, and I can move this wherever I want to put it. So now I know that that's angel hair squash and not just some random winter squash. Now, another really cool thing you can do here is nope, that's not what I want to do. I can click on that so I can select it. I can come over here to show companions. So now it's going to show us all these different things that are companion plants for squash, different things that help squash out and are helped by squash. And you can do this with any type of plant. So a lot of times what I'll do is I find what I want to grow, I place them in the beds, and then as I place a plant in the bed, if I don't already just know off the top of my head what a good companion plant is for it, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to find a good companion plant, and if it's something I already want to grow, already have seeds for, then I will then place it right there. If it's not something I already have seeds for, let's say it's a flower, I don't start my flowers from seed, so I will place everything in my beds. What I'll do is I'll just go to the local nurseries to get flowers, but before I go to the nurseries, I'll go through some of my plants and start writing down what the different flowers are that are going to be good companion plants for it. Let's say I want to do cabbage. I'm going to bring some cabbage over here. I'm going to do a row of cabbage. I'm going to double click on my cabbage and I'm going to come over here, and this is very helpful right here. So this shows sow indoors. So I want to sow my seeds indoors in March and April, and then I can plant them outdoors in April through May, not March, May. And then this is gonna be my harvest time, right? Now let's say I wanted to plant something else in this space after these were done. So what I'll do is I'll specify in-ground dates. Let's say I'm gonna harvest this in August right here. So it's gonna be in the ground in April. So let's say it's gonna be in the ground in April, and then I'm gonna be harvesting this in August. So these are my in-ground dates. So now if I come here, it shows this is today, so everything is right here. But if I come over here and I show, let's go to September, the cabbage disappears. And the cabbage disappears because it's not in the ground anymore in September. So what this does is if you really want to plan out your garden for later on in the year, it's going to help you a lot, because now I'm looking at September, there's nothing right there. That means I know I can plant something there in September. So that's another thing that's pretty cool. Let's say I want to know more about growing potatoes. I can come over here and I can go more information. So I double clicked on it. I came over here. I want more information. This is going to tell me everything I need to know, at least most of what I need to know about how to grow these. It's going to show plants that benefit this plant. It's going to show plants that are mutually beneficial, row spacing, everything that I need to know is right here. So this is definitely something that I kind of refer back to relatively often because it's definitely helpful. All right, so we looked at plants a little bit. There's a lot more that you can do with this, but I'm just kind of hitting the main points, the stuff that I use. So let's say we wanted to put a raised bed in here, okay? So I come over here to objects, and I'm gonna write raised bed. Let's say wood. I think I have mine as wood, even though they're not wood. I'll show you that here in just a minute. So you can make a raised bed, whatever dimensions you wanna make it, and then you can take, let's say I wanted to put my cabbage in raised beds. So let's say I wanna do an entire raised bed of cabbage. I can come here, I can make it as big as the raised bed, and I can fit not quite 3 rows, but I can do 2 rows. So this is really helpful when you're planning out raised beds or planning out blocks or planning out different areas of the garden. You can really start having fun with squeezing things into little places and finding out what can grow there. This is definitely something I wanted to show you. This was something that I just kind of threw together. This is a made up, just fake garden that I made here just to kind of show you what you can do with this. So there's so many different objects. So if we talk about objects, let's look at this. So we've got a chicken coop, we've got a chicken run, we've got a chicken water, chicken feeder, we've got different pasts we can put down, we've got a few beehives over here, some compost piles, we've got a pond, some fruit bushes and trees. Another thing that is really cool, and I feel like this is something that really kind of, this helps a lot for a lot of people. Over here we've got a bean trellis that we put in, and then we've got peas and beans, right? But let's say I wanted to extend the season on that. So right now, if we go here and we look at our beans. So if you look at when you can harvest them, when you can sow them, so we start right there at the beginning of March, ends halfway through October. But if we take a row cover and put this over, okay, so now if we come over here to the pole beans, so we come down, so we went to our plant list, which is right here. Okay, here we go, pole beans. Now, this changes when you can put it in the ground, when you can harvest it. If you look down here to this has us in the middle of February, all the way out into the middle of November. So when you use some kind of row covering, it calculates that into your plan. So if we go back to our plan here, if you look at everything I've got in the greenhouse here, so I've got these things in a greenhouse, and I've got a greenhouse. It's going to extend the season on those. It's going to extend the seasons on these that have the polytunnel, or the polytunnel over it. So you can extend your season if you have some kind of season extender. Now, if you're doing this on paper, really, this is what my paper used to look like. Well, let's go. This is my garden, okay? So what my paper used to look like when I first started planning out this specific garden right here, I did this exact thing, but on graph paper. I did it so it was scalable. I did, one little box is one square foot. And I built out my entire garden on graph paper before I ever put it here on this program. So if you are doing this on paper, do it like this. So take graph paper, draw out your raised beds, draw out all your plants, draw out everything you need to draw out. Now, I think what is really helpful with this is I can come over here to my plant list. So this is my actual garden so far, what I have. This is what I have so far in my garden. What I think this does really well is if I come over here to my plant list, it's gonna show me everything that I'm growing, right? Every single plant that I'm growing. And although not all of this is gonna be started from seed by me, it's gonna show me when I can put it outside, and it's gonna also show me when to harvest and when to start the seeds indoors. So this right here, so my onions and my green onions are going to need to be started soon, and then my tomatoes are going to need to be started. I haven't put my peppers in here yet, but I know my peppers are going to need to be started around the same time as the tomatoes. Now, another thing that was really awesome about this computer program, so if you haven't seen my videos where I'm in the garden, I have drip irrigation that runs throughout my entire garden, okay? When I was planning that, I needed a parts list, and normally when I plan a drip irrigation, I just do it on graph paper, which is perfectly fine. You can do it on graph paper. But what this really helped me with is if I go to, let's say, it'll be this plan right here. So this is that same garden, right? Same layout. I've got my raised beds there. I've got everything laid out. But what I did is I took and I built out my drip irrigation system. Every tiny little piece of my drip irrigation system I was able to put on this plan, and then I came over to my parts list, and then that gave me a shopping list. So I knew exactly how much emitter tubing I needed. It told me exactly how much supply tubing I needed. It showed me how many regulators, hose fittings, elbows, transfer, everything I possibly needed for my drip irrigation. I pretty much just took this and did my order online. That was probably the biggest help I've ever gotten from this, besides garden planning, obviously, but that definitely helped me quite a bit. All right, so moving back over to my actual plan for this season, there's a couple things to keep in mind, right? And these are the things that at least I'm keeping in mind. When I'm placing something, I'm thinking companion plants. So even though this just shows cabbage, I'm gonna be putting flowers in there. Even though this just shows broccoli, I'm probably gonna be sticking other things in there because that's just how I roll. And so if I knew that I wanted to put a companion plant with my cabbage, right? I'm gonna come over here, I'm gonna double click on it. I'm going to look at show all companions. And these are all different things. So let's say I wanted to put a flower in there. I could put a zinnia in there, or alyssum. I always struggle with that word. So this is going to give me a very quick way of seeing what I can plant there. And you can do the same thing when you're doing this on paper. It just takes longer, right? So instead of double clicking and going through that way, I can just go and do a quick Google search of what are good companion plants for cabbage, right? So you can do the same thing. You can do a quick Google search of in zone 7A, that's my zone, so in zone 7A, when should I start my seeds for cabbage? You know, you can find all of this information on Google. It just takes longer. And honestly, when I was doing this on paper, this is how I set it up. I got my graph paper and I drew this. I drew my garden plan, I drew my raised beds, and then I just started writing the plants in. But as I was writing them in, I had a whole separate piece of paper, right? Just a notebook. In that notebook, I would write down the type of plant that I wanted to grow, and I would go find all the information I could about it. So when to start it in my zone, what are the good companion plants? Is it frost hardy? What temperatures does it like? Is it a shade plant? Is it a sun plant? How many hours of sunlight does it want? I would put all this information right there in the notebook. And this was all in the planting phase. So in the early stages, as I'm trying to figure out what seeds I'm gonna be planting and what I'm gonna be growing in my garden, I'm making this list on a notebook completely separate from my graph paper. So that way, as I'm putting the plants into my graph paper, I have something that I can look over at. I can see all this information about that plant, and then that way I have kind of more of an educated guess on where to put it within my garden. This process takes a long time. I'm like a whole week, a week and a half into planting my garden, and this is not what it's gonna look like by the time that I actually plant it. By the time I plant it, this is gonna look so much different, because this for me was just like stage one. I put all my plants in, and now I'm gonna start going through finding companion plants. I'm gonna move stuff around. If there's one of these plants that are gonna work well with another plant, then I'm gonna move them next to each other. I'm going to be putting them in the same bed. I'm gonna find flowers to put in here with them. So by the time that I actually put plants in the ground, this is gonna look completely different. But this is how you start figuring that stuff out, is you start putting it in and doing the research and figuring out, if I know that, so if you look here, this is a south-facing garden, right? But I have a ton of trees over here. I've got a house right here. The sun is gonna come over here, and the sun is gonna come from right here, and it's gonna come kind of over the center of my garden, but then by the end of the day, it's gonna end up just below center over on this side, just south of center. And so I know that anything over here, like if I have tall things right here, then it's gonna shade out some of this stuff right here. I know by the end of the season, it starts to shift a little bit, right? So by the end of the season, the sun, instead of the sun coming down right here, the sun is gonna come down over here. So I'm really gonna get some more of those shadows. So those are just kind of some things to think about as you're planning your garden. Think about your shady areas, your sunny areas. It sounds kind of overwhelming, but that's why we start in January, right? We're starting early, so that way we can really figure out where to place everything. Now at this point, if you did it in a program, you're gonna have your plant list. It's gonna show you when to start everything. It's gonna show you when to put it outdoors. Just keep in mind that if you did start it indoors, let's say here, so with our broccoli, we're starting it here, and then we're gonna sow it outdoors right here, okay? But that means, even though this isn't telling us this, in this general time frame, I'm gonna wanna start hardening off my plants. I'm going to take them outside and slowly introduce them to the sun, because my grow lights that I have in my grow room are not even close to what the sun is gonna do. So if I were to just take my broccoli that's been in my grow room, place it outside, I'm gonna have a real big problem, because I'm gonna get sun scald. Honestly, the plants probably wouldn't even make it. So you wanna harden off those plants. If you don't know what hardening off is, there's tons of videos on YouTube about hardening off plants. So definitely look into that. If you're doing it on graph paper, this is where you wanna start writing in that notebook and making a list of all your plants, and maybe even do it like calendar style, where, if you know you need to start planting in March or February, whatever it might be. So, make a column for February. These are the plants I need to start in February. Make a column for March. These are the plants I need to start in March. And then also, put, start in March, plant outside on this date. This takes some extra time, but this is what turns you into a good gardener, right? You're learning a lot of different things, even though it's a lot of information and it can be overwhelming. Once again, we're starting in January. This is the pre-work that's gonna give you a successful season. So if you're doing this on paper, just get it all listed out. Find out when you need to be planting these, do some Google searches. They're pretty relatively easy to find, especially if you know your zone, your USDA hardiness zone. And if you haven't checked it recently, go look at it again, because they changed it this year. I know I went from zone 6A to zone 7A, which was quite a bit different. It was pretty surprising. But realistically, at this point, we have everything we possibly can on paper, right? Everything that we could plan, or at least we're on our way to planning, right? So I'm doing all this. Everything's on paper. But here's a big caveat, is you need to understand that it's not gonna end up like this. What we're doing right now here is not what your season is gonna turn out like. You're gonna have, some of these plants aren't gonna make it. Some of these plants are gonna have pest issues, disease issues. You're gonna have a terrible harvest. You're gonna have, a hailstorm's gonna come through. You're gonna have a lot of different issues. Do this as a good starting point. I probably use this for 70% of my garden planning. I get it all out there, right? But a lot of this stuff, like my broccoli here, my cauliflower here, some of my beans, peas, cabbage, a lot of these different things, they're gonna be harvested well before the end of the season. But I could go through and put in my in-ground dates, right? And I could plan something to put in their place. But I don't want to do that. I want to get 2 weeks into the season, get everything in the ground, and then just kind of look at it. And when I start harvesting, I'm going to find something to put in there. You know what I mean? I don't want to have everything so planned out that it takes the fun out of it. I want it to be fun. And if you take the fun away from gardening, you're not going to do it very long. And if you're anything like me, you're going to start all these seeds, right? You're going to have a whole room somewhere full of seeds. And then you're going to go to the nurseries when it's spring, because that's exciting. It's exciting for me. I love going to the nurseries. We've got some amazing nurseries here in Utah, like J&J Nursery, if you've been in Utah. So J&J Nursery is just insane. You can spend hours in there. So you go to the nurseries and you see all these cool things. And even though you don't have room to grow them, you're going to go buy some. You're going to put them in buckets. You're going to put them in totes, stick them in your, like I know right here. So all along this backside, I've got a walkway that I don't really use. So I know that I'm going to end up just like throwing melons here and letting them trail along the walkway there, because that's what I want to grow. I'm going to shove as much stuff as I can in there, and I'm going to go to these nurseries, and I'm going to come home with plants that I don't need and place them wherever I can figure out how to place them, because that's what gardening is about. You want to have fun. You don't want to have everything so scheduled and planned out that it takes the fun out of it. And save some room for experimentation. Like, I know that there's a lot of plants that I've tried to grow that people say they can't grow here, but I'm going to try anyways. I've got a lemon tree, right? And I've been growing this lemon tree, I think 3 years now. Last year it finally started to flower, but it didn't fruit. This is something that, people say you can't really grow here, but I'm figuring out how to do it. It's in a pot. I bring it in during the winter. I put it out during the summer, and I'm trying to figure out a place to put it that it has like the best environment for that plant. The only thing a good plant is going to do is it's going to give you a good start. It's going to give you a foundation to your season, so that way you can hit the ground running. But I know that 2 weeks or a month, 2 months into the season, I'm just going to fly by the seat of my pants. I'm going to grow whatever I want, or whatever my wife wants, because we all know that she's the boss.